Welcome back to our course on FinTech, Foundations and Overview. In this session, we're going to be talking about FinTech for Dinosaurs. And I'd like to introduce a guest speaker and person that I'll be talking to about this topic, who is Veronique, who is a professor here at UST. He's been here more than 10 years teaching finance at HKUST, Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and has been working in the finance and banking industry since the early 1980s. She gave a presentation here at our university on FinTech for Dinosaurs, and I found it an interesting point of view and opportunity for thinking or setting a foundation of what is FinTech and why does it matter, and how should banks or big firms think about it. So with that, let me turn the time over to Veronique to share some of your thoughts on this topic of FinTech for Dinosaurs.
Hello everybody. So I'm going to talk about FinTech from the point of view of a dinosaur, because I've been in the industry for over 3 decades, and I've seen a lot of changes. And to me, what we now call FinTech is really nothing new, because financial firms have been using technology to improve services as far back as the industry has been around, which is quite a few centuries actually. And if you think about it, Paul Volcker, who was the former chairman of the Fed, he was discussing technology, and he said, well, as far as I'm concerned, the most important financial innovation is actually the ATM. And ATM is a very powerful innovation. I've seen the birth of it, because it gives you access to financial services whenever the banks are closed. So from this point of view, it's an amazing transformation that has had a big impact on consumers around the world. Now, when I started working, which was back in the early 1980s, and at a bank that at the time was the largest bank in the world in terms of assets, what did I have to work with? We had a big mainframe computer. It used up the space of a huge room, but it had less computing power than what you have currently in your phone. I had a telephone. Now, this is not a mobile phone. This was a fixed line phone with a rotary dial, and you picked up and you dialed, and hopefully there was somebody at the end of the line. One of the most important things that we used was a telex. A telex machine, think of it as a typewriter with a big roll of paper, and it combined the technology of typewriter and the wire. Telex was used up until early 2000 to confirm international transactions between banks. We obviously used typewriters, and we were very modern because we use electric typewriters. And of course the post office. The post office was used to send documents from one party to another. So this is what I had to deal with. This is what we had to deal with in the industry. Now, did that make the industry inefficient? No. We did multi-billion-dollar transactions just like we did today. So what has happened over all my 20-odd years in banking? Well, I've witnessed a lot of changes. And the impact of those technological innovation was multidimensional. One of the important impact was how technology made things more efficient. To take one example, we started off with typewriters, so the secretaries would take that dictation and then type the memos or the letters on a machine together with carbon copies. Now, we adapted the Wang machine technology, which was one of the very first word processor, and it was a big change for all the secretaries, because all of a sudden it was very easy to make changes to a memo, which meant that the people dictating were taking less care and were more prone to do changes. Think about also what the impact is in terms of the jobs, because now you can actually type your memo yourself. You don't actually need to dictate it to a secretary, then would then type it on the typewriter. The second and most spectacular impact of technology is how technology changed how fast transactions are processed. So when I started, we were using the post office to send documents. And then one day we had a fax machine. So the fax machine transformed the speed of transactions because you can then send information across the world almost instantly. So think about the transaction you do. Let's say I was in Paris doing a deal somewhere in Indonesia, and I had to send the contract to the lawyers in Indonesia. Well, we had to put it in the envelope, send it through the post office. When it got to Indonesia, the lawyer would open the envelope during office hours, then mark up the contract, send it back. Think multiple months. Fax machine, you put the thing in the machine, it comes up on the other side, and you have an almost instant response. So think how fast we have moved. Well, of course, today we're talking even faster because we are talking about systems like high-frequency trading, algo trading, where the speed is incomparable. In seconds, we do things that would take a year to do. The volume of transactions that we can handle and the speed at which they are processed exceeds everything that we have seen so far. The third aspect is information. Now, when I was very young, I had to find the information. Our regulators struggled to find information. If I didn't have the book in the library, where was I going to find the information? Today, my students Google everything. They have access to all the information they need, but they have way too much information. And the source of that information is not carefully vetted. So we have an overload of information. We don't know how to process it. And the perspective is quite different. And think about what it means in terms of regulation. Our regulators, for most of them, come from a generation like mine or even a generation younger, which is still in this mind frame of, I need access to more information. The reality is that get tons of information. And the challenge is to find which information is relevant, which information can be trusted, and what to do with this information. So what's going on right now? So we talk a lot about the rise of FinTech, but a lot of people also talk about TechFin. So what's the difference? FinTech is basically financial institutions using technology to improve their processes. TechFin is technology institutions providing financial services. Think Alibaba, Alipay, Tencent, etc. And of course, when we think of FinTech today, even though technology has been used by financial institutions for centuries, we associate it mainly with the big giants from China that have totally revolutionized the financial markets in China.